I'm doing much right now besides floating in the pool.
Nice.
But I did read it and highlighted a ton and made notes and went back to my overview for this year and included a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So I'm excited to hear.
Awesome. Well, why don't we get started, and we'll do introductions here in a minute. Let's see if I can get it. Yes, I can. So in kind of keeping in spirit with the book, one of the things that she talks about is kind of like this language of emotions and how do we communicate about those. And so this visual that you see is a mood meter. And actually, Jennifer asked me where this came from. Honestly, I Googled it and you can get all kinds, and I've got a couple other ones in the slide. But I thought what we might do is try to practice how this could be used. And so when you introduce yourself, if you're comfortable, you don't have to if you're not, kind of tell us where you kind of fall on this mood meter. So it kind of is placed along the bottom, kind of feeling good, unpleasant, all the way to pleasant. And then your energy level, you'll see the lower energy on the left, higher energy. I always get my XYs mixed up, so I don't know which is which. But anyway, this is kind of the mood meter. So if you, whenever you're ready to jump in and introduce yourself, and if you feel like it, tell us kind of where you fall on the mood meter today.
Okay, well, I can start. I'm Jennifer Pusateri. I'm with the University of Kentucky. And I saw, hey, there's Cynthia. Hi, Cynthia. And I saw Ron pop on there a minute ago. So, and whenever you all enter, Cynthia and Ron, you're muted. So you'll have to unmute yourself to talk, just so you know. So today I am feeling, gosh, I don't know. I think maybe optimistic. Well, or grateful. I'm feeling also very grateful today. So let me go down to the lower energy because I could use a nap. So I'm really more grateful and blessed today.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer.
Nice.
Well, I'd be glad to go next.
Hey, Ron.
Ron Rogers, and I think I'm feeling elated. That's what I'm feeling. Elated. I'm so excited that Barb invited me. You know, in Ohio, when Barb asks us to do something, everybody in Ohio jumps.
Oh, it's very kind of you, Ron.
and I'm with Ocali. I'm the director of the UDL Center at Ocali.
Now, Ron, why can't we see your face? Do you have your little thing covered up like you always do?
Yeah, I do, and I'm eating my lunch because that was how I worked this into my schedule. So
gotcha. All right.
I will save you all from having to watch me eat.
We'll allow that. Thanks, Ron.
Okay, I'll go next. I am always ecstatic when I talk about being a teacher and being in the classroom, and I am inspired by Barb all the time, and I'm feeling focused. So that's something unusual for me. So take it and run.
Might have something to do with laying by the pool all the time.
Yeah, it probably does.
Thank you, Paula.
I'm looking for, I can go next. Oh, there's folk. I was looking for focused on the map here. And I think this is the grid that came out of Yale University, according to Allison's book. So I'm Lee. I'm up here in increasingly humid New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Oh, no complaints. We have not had the thunderstorms and all of that have been out in the Midwest. I guess I'm feeling pretty content right now. My summer course just launched, and everybody seems to be understanding what they're supposed to be doing. And we're doing a new format. We're trying UDL in 3 small chunks as opposed to 1 big chunk. We're just doing the foundations over the next 6 weeks. So I'm hoping it goes well. So that's me.
Awesome. Thank you, Lee.
Hi, I'll go next. I am Mary. I'm in Missouri. I work for the University of Missouri. Right now, I am actually a little bit anxious. It is 4-H fair time around here, and we have kids with cows. So cows got loose, and all of the things this morning, but
Oh,
I'm
wow.
hoping it's over. But right now, still a little anxious, still coming off chasing cows.
That gave me a visual, Mary. It makes me smile.
Yeah, I wasn't smiling earlier, but now I'm laughing about it. So.
Awesome.
That's hysterical.
It is.
I can
Who
go
else do we
next.
have? We have Cynthia. Yeah.
I can go next. I'm feeling inspired today by finishing this book.
Yeah.
It was a great. At the beginning of the summer, I thought, "Oh man, how are we going to fit this in?" And things are just starting to get crazy, and the book is finished, and things are crazy. So I am inspired by what I've read. It's
Nice.
exciting.
Awesome. Thank you, Cynthia. Do we have everybody then? Is that everybody but me, maybe? Looks like. So I'm Barb Gentili Green, and I offered to facilitate today. So I've never done this, never done Zoom. So I know that I have the support of you guys. So that's helpful. I'm feeling energized because I always get energized when I have to try something new. And also a little in the red, a little jittery because I haven't done this before. But I know you guys are great participants. So you'll just carry us on. And the really super exciting thing is that Allison Posey is going to join us at 12:30. So keep that in mind so that if you have some questions or anything you want to pick her brain about, she is here for us. And she may jump on earlier, but for sure she'll be here by 12:30. Sound good?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So that is one example of a mood meter that you see. And then here's the other one. And I placed this video. We're not going to watch the video, but if you, and Jennifer, I don't know if we share the PowerPoint or anything. I mean, I don't mind doing that, but you'd have to help me figure that out. And then you could play it. But if you just Google it, Yale has a lot of resources around the mood meter, and this little video kind of helps explain that a little bit. So this page is definitely from Yale. So, and just more Yale resources. So kind of this concept of the colors, it's not good or bad to be in any one of them, right? And you need certain kind of emotional levels of charge when you're trying different things. So this was just another visual way to show what that meant by the mood meter. So, and then this is Allison Posey's. This is how she uses this in her trainings. So, and she uses the little cartoon characters. So this is actually Allison's that she has put in some of her presentations.
That's cute.
So just a different way of doing it. So, hey Steve, welcome. I don't know if you can hear it, so one of my colleagues. Oh, and Dina, right? Did I say it right?
Yeah, that's Gina.
Awesome. Welcome.
Everybody.
All right. So why don't we jump right into kind of the first question that comes out of chapter 6. So in what ways are you building or hope to build a shared language of emotions as you work with learners? That's kind of one part of the question. And then how can you help learners shift emotions for productive learning? So if you think about that mood meter, sometimes depending on the task, it might not be a good thing to be kind of in the red zone, kind of super energized. You may need something a little calmer. And so, how do you or could you see helping learners shift to get into that zone of productive learning? So there's question 1.
So I can jump in. I thought that was a really interesting part of the book, and I'm teaching undergrads and grads in the fall. And one of the thoughts, I liked that idea of having that grid available when students come into the classroom. And I was thinking, I could get a bunch of little, I think our whiteboards are magnetized. I'll have to check on this, but I think they are. But giving everybody a magnet as they walked in the door. And then having them put it up on the board, and then just talking about what are the strategies they use, and then what would be the kinds of strategies that they could use with, they're all elementary school people, so what are the things that you could use with elementary school teachers? So I'm excited about trying some of this stuff and just using more of that language. And I think sort of allowing them, you know, I thought she said somewhere about she's heard people say, leave your emotions at the door.
Yeah.
I think we need to sort of address that and say, nope, bring them on in and let's see how they can get in the way, but how they also can be really helpful
Yeah.
to learning.
Right, because how well does that work when you tell someone to leave their emotions at the door? Like, that ticks me off, so that's really going to help me be productive, right?
Right, especially if it's in those extreme corners.
Yeah.
I think.
Yes, excellently.
Well, my classes can be in those extreme corners. I teach 11th grade, and I also teach 10th grade at a career center. And so my kids come from 9 different homeschools, and they usually spend 2 years with us. And I like being the junior English teacher because I'm really the first person that they have contact with. And one of my goals is to establish that they have a clean slate with me and with our school. And I'm using that to help motivate them to become better learners. And it's really something I believe in, and it's something unique to my school. And I'm also using it in my Comp 1 classes at the college that I'm teaching Comp 1 at. So kind of doing a little double duty, and, learning a lot, and really enthusiastic about it, because it makes a difference in the classroom when they have a mindset that they can learn and they will learn, and I'm there to support them. So
nice. Great example, Paula. Thank you.
I really appreciated the graphic that you just put up with all the lots of different emotions that were all over the grid. I think sometimes people see as the extremes. I'm mad, I'm happy. And so having that wide array with lots of different language, I think is helpful in trying to be, even with myself, thinking about, okay, really, where am I? Am I mad or anxious or whatever, to make myself really be more precise in my language. I think that was interesting.
Yeah. And just to build on that, Mary, like right now I'm reading How Emotions Are Made, which is just intriguing me, but like the words that people assign to emotions, what you might assign and what I might assign are very, very different, and how we cannot, and Allison even talks about this in her book, like she thought she could read her children's emotions on this when they were on their trip. And so how we, sometimes I think about this with the work I've done with kids with autism, like we try to teach them, well, oh, you feel this, and that may not be exactly what they feel, but because you can't really tell what somebody's feeling. And so that really intrigued me, that thought about all the words we use.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working with a delegation from China right now, like literally like in the next 20 minutes or whatever. But like, it's been really interesting to me to see what words they understand and what they don't, right? I mean, there's obviously a language barrier there. And so I'm thinking about that also from the perspective of like a first grader, that, you know, the only language emotions they may have language for are the ones at the extremes. And so I think to use a chart like the one that we have with all the words on it would be really helpful, I think, to help them determine, oh, this is how you're feeling. Well, it might be more of this. Is it? And explaining some of the words and what they mean. Because there's some words in there I think I know what they mean, but I probably should look them up because I really don't know if I know what they actually mean. So I think that's interesting. And then I also wanted to point out, I think Cynthia put something in the chat about this. How does this apply to online classes, or could this apply to online classes? And what might that look like? And I don't know if anybody's ever used Pear Deck. It's an add-on for Google Slides, but it allows students to be able to go in and like they could actually place a dot on the screen, and then you could view them all together. Like, so you could, once everybody's placed one on their individual screens in an online setting or whatever, then you could come back and project onto the screen everyone's answers, so you could sort of see where they were grouped, and help the class kind of work through, okay, I see we're all super enraged today. Maybe there was a school shooting or something terrible like that, right? So like maybe they're just really on edge. I see that this is kind of where most of the class is. Who's got some ideas of how we can maybe move to a place that would be more conducive for learning? I don't know. That's one idea I had.
Nice.
Pear deck,
what did
yeah,
you
like,
that?
it's like the fruit, PEAR, pear deck.
Pear deck. Okay.
Got it.
So,
Can you use that asynchronously, Jennifer? Do you know? Like, could they do it over a week, or would it have to be more close than that?
The pear deck?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
pear deck.
Could it be asynchronous? Yeah, I was wondering that as well.
Maybe it could be a reaction to a specific assignment or discussion topic. I think that that's often incorporated in the discussion, you know, talk about how you're feeling about what we read and that kind of stuff. But I just wondered what this might look like. I'm always interested in different approaches.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the potential interactivity of using Pear Deck.
Yeah.
So thanks for that.
Yeah, I was thinking about even in my undergrad class using it over time, having them maybe not being outward on a board, but more personal, and have them see if there's any changes over time.
You could put it in a Google form and then, you know, redo it every day, every week, and then it would keep a chart for you also.
Oh, that's good.
In the Excel sheet. And then you could turn that into a graphic, a chart of some kind, and really see the flow of it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have great ideas.
Yeah, those are great. I love that.
I do too. Awesome. All right. Anybody else want to kind of weigh in on that thought about the idea of a mood meter? Or should we give a couple seconds and then we can move on to the next question? All righty. Well, let's move on. So kind of bear with me as we go through some of the slides you've already seen. So one of the things I thought we could do is just watch this quick little YouTube I found on this self-determination theory. So in case somebody hasn't read the book, they might understand what this is talking about. So trying to build in multiple options in case folks haven't been able to read the book. So let's hope this works.
Our three basic needs are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. We've heard some things about them today, but I'm just going to briefly say what they are. For us, relatedness is feeling cared for and connected to others. It has to do with a sense of belonging, a feeling that you matter to the other people that are there. And relatedness is enhanced not just by people treating you warmly and including you, but it's also enhanced by your giving to them and you're being able to matter in their lives. That's part of what helps us feel connected. So it's not a one-way street in relatedness. It has to do with both. And again, we'll show evidence to that effect. Competence is really commonly studied in psychology. Most theories of psychology would probably agree with us on this one point, which is competence is essential to wellness. To feel effective in your environment, to have some sense of mastery of the things that are important to you, very, very important, and environments can have a big impact on that experience. And then finally, finally autonomy, which has been probably the most controversial, but also the most central of our psychological needs in the sense of research and our integrative mission, so to speak. Autonomy refers to behavior that is self-endorsed, that you agree with and find congruent within yourself. And so autonomy here means that you feel choiceful, self-initiating, and when you're fully autonomous, you're wholeheartedly behind the thing that you're doing. And again, because of that wholeheartedness, that's why performance tends to be better when you're acting out of autonomous motives.
All right. So let me get out of that. Could you all hear that okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. So I just want to, something struck me as I was rereading this chapter and as I watched that video, and I told my colleague Steve this morning, who's on here, who's also covered his face, I noticed, like Ron Rogers. But it reminded me of the women's soccer team, the U.S. women's soccer team that just won, right? So I thought about each of these three pieces: the competency, the relatedness, and the autonomy, because I think there's such an amazing cohesive team. And so I thought about the competence part, like they take that time to break down the game of soccer. They're running the drills, working on the skills. They don't just jump right in and play a game right off. Like through the week, they're practicing their shots or their dribbles or whatever. They're getting that feedback. They're getting on the field guidance all the time. They're celebrating. This team is a team that celebrates with each other, like just the smiles that you see, that relatedness. You know, they you can tell they really care about each other. Just the way they have that collective energy and the way they laugh and the way they smile. And then they recognize that they need each other. Like they can't do this alone, and they work together for that common goal. And then in terms of autonomy, I think about how they each use their own voice. I think about Megan, how, you know, her voice on and off the field for trying to promote women's soccer and equal pay and those kind of things, as well as their autonomy within the field, you know, on the field. So that really kind of connected to me in something that was happening like right now. So Steve, later you'll have to tell me whether I did okay on that sports analogy. Steve and I have this thing because I do not like sports. So he uses those analogies all the time. So as that lead in, leads us kind of to our next question. And here's just another visual of those three things that kind of drive that motivation. You need all three of those for motivation. And so here's our question number 2. Like, what strategies are you using or hope to use to support those three components of self-determination and motivation: competence, relatedness, autonomy, so we really can get those motivated learners? What were your thoughts around that?
Because I'm working primarily with adult learners, I might be in a different context than the K-12 world, but we work very hard to allow our learners to choose the path that they're going to take. They're all going to get to the same place, but they can choose the modules that are most interesting to them to complete first. You still have to do them all, but you can start wherever you want. Actually, you don't have to do them all. You only have to do the ones your director picked. But they still at least get to choose which ones to do when. And we have a lot of, with the harder ones, when we're working with people that are unfamiliar with technology, we have a lot of little benchmarking assignments that they can complete easily that can help them develop confidence so that they can do the harder ones or the longer, more involved ones later with this list of things that they've already accomplished. One of the things that we have heard has been most helpful is most learning management systems have some kind of checklist feature so that it shows what you've completed and what you haven't. Just that visual ability to see where they are in the course and what they have left has been huge. And we always say, this may not apply to your course, or think about how this would apply to your course so that they can relate what they're learning to what they're actually going to be teaching later. And a lot of times we get an argument that starts with, well, this won't work in my course. Well, yes, it will. Let's talk about what that might look like. But we like to let them lead the conversation.
That's an excellent example. I think that idea of helping people, and not kids, I work with kids, so if I default to that, but seeing the journey and where they're coming along on that journey really does help that competence piece. Like, they can see that they're making progress. They may not realize it along the way, but that is so powerful.
I agree. And I agree. I feel like a lot of things that work in K-12 also work for upper class students. I mean, undergrads like to play games too. They have a good time with that. They just maybe are a little bit more concerned about how does this apply to where I need to get to. They don't want to do anything that's not a direct path to their objective. So we really focus on making sure that whenever we ask them to do something, we link that directly back to an objective so that they can see why. They still argue, but it's life.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the things that jumped out from this part of the chapter was about setting up clear expectations for group work. And we actually just were talking about this in the meeting that we've been having here with the Chinese faculty, but like talking about how to get students ready for group work. And so the person who was telling us about this was talking about how to foster this in like a 200-person class, and how to set up groups, but also how to set the groups up for success by allowing them to create their own group like guidelines and rules. And like if somebody's not doing their job in the group, how do we take care of that? And to actually have a clear step 1, step 2, step 3 of things that they can do, because I mean, these are college students, even grad students sometimes don't know how to work in groups very well. And so I like that she pointed that out as being something that we can model, but also to increase their autonomy by turning that over to them and saying, you're in charge of your group. You don't come to me and tell me your group's not working. This is your group, but I'm going to help you figure out how to handle that. I think that's really awesome.
That is. Great.
One of the things that I want to establish with my students this year is the happiness in the work. As a comp teacher, the excitement for me isn't the end product that the student produces. It's each step that the student takes in revision that gets them to the product that I have so much joy in, and those aha moments, and oh, I get this now. And so those are the types of experiences I want to establish this year, and I'm doing that with UDL, and really looking at the engagement and taking my students back to why is this relevant? When am I going to use this as a welder, as a construction worker? Because knowing how to work in a group and collaborate are all of those essential skills that people need when they go out into the real world. And I think it's important to plant that seed in my students, because I know that it probably hasn't been planted yet.
I think, Paula, what you also talked about, and you've referenced often, that relatedness piece, yep. Like that, your relationship with them, their relationships with each other, and how you foster that in your classroom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, and I saw that Allison jumped on. Hey, Allison.
Hi, and I kind of don't want to be here and interrupt the conversation, so keep talking.
We will, but we just couldn't not welcome you. We're just so pleased you're here.
This is all, I can't tell you how honored I am and excited, and yeah, really looking forward to just hearing some of the conversation that's going on. But I'm probably blaming you. There's actually sunshine today, so I'm gonna. There we go.
Great. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Who else would like to weigh in on this idea of what you're doing to?
Yeah, I'll pop in. I guess I was a little bit surprised how important the relatedness component was.
Lee, I think you froze up there a little bit.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, shoot, maybe she'll pop back on here in a minute.
Okay. Yeah, we lost her, didn't we? Okay. Well, hopefully Lee will join back in a minute here. So anybody else, feel free to jump in on this question.
I kind of want to jump in, and maybe not in a higher ed setting, but so I give private lessons, flute lessons, and I've given like, oh gosh, hundreds of them in the last like 12 years. And my approach has changed over time, where I'm like, oh, you need to learn this repertoire, you know, this is standard. This is what's going to, you know, pop up in auditions, to, you know, providing more options like this will, you know, this could serve you in because, you know, it's commonly asked for to, well, what do you want to learn? I'm not going to force you to learn, you know, music that you're not passionate about. And I guess that's kind of the autonomy piece, but I've noticed that helps a lot. And another thing that I've done, and I'm sure most music teachers do this, is we take note of our progress every time we meet. And I remember having one student for like 7 years, and she had like these 2 notebooks ever since we started. And she, you know, she's so hard on herself. I was like, pull out that old notebook. And we went back. She's like, oh yeah, I've come a long way, you know, like taking notes, you know, just reflecting on how far she's come. Like, oh, I remember when I was learning my chromatic scale, like I didn't know all my notes. And I think that's important, an important piece in regards to like competence and being reflective on progress. So that was just something I was just kind of thinking in relation to all the private lessons I've done. I'm like, you know, I've kind of seen this on my one-on-one sessions. So I just thought I'd add that.
That's a great example. I love that. Oh. I think about just this piece of relatedness doesn't have to be super hard, like the example. And Lee, we see your back, so we're going to make sure that you share what you were sharing before we lost you. But, you know, just greeting people at the door when they are walking into our classrooms or into our buildings or whatever, just like, how are we making people realize that we appreciate the fact that they're just in our space with us? And like, I think sometimes we make things too difficult, and I love that example that she gave, like interact with students as they come in and out of the classroom. Not hard.
I think that makes, so I thought my computer was plugged in. Apparently it wasn't, and then it decided to update, so I'm on my phone.
Oh no, okay.
Love technology. I think I said that earlier when you were dealing with the audio. Anyway, I think that makes, even though I only heard the last little bit of this, I think that makes sense, that to feel engaged in the learning, you need to know that it matters that you're there. And I'm surprised at how impactful even shooting a quick email to a student saying, missed you in class today, and not as a, you weren't here and you're in big trouble, but just, is everything okay? You know, you're usually here, you weren't here today. Seems to make a difference in their ability to be a part of the class and get something out of it.
Yeah, I love that. My son is doing his grad work, and so he's teaching, and he also loves to bake. So his way of relatedness is he takes baked goods in, like always the first class and usually every other class. And so like that's how they break bread together, so to speak. But that's how he has developed this relationship with his students.
That's awesome.
One of the phrases I loved is the idea that you would miss a student when they're gone, when they're not in the class. And sometimes I remember feeling relief sometimes when some students weren't in class one day, and that breaks my heart. So it's almost like the flip of that. How do we make it so that all of those differences are actually exactly what we want and need each day? It's like we're not complete unless we're all able to engage and be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Great.
So true.
All right. Hey, Stacy. I just saw Stacy and Heidi joined us, and Rocky. Okay, I'm still learning the system here, so I'm like figuring out how to see everybody. So feel free to jump in at any time. All right. Anybody else want to weigh in on that, or shall we keep moving forward? We want to make sure we've got some time at about, you know, picking Allison's brain while we have her. So, all right. Let's move on. So as we move into chapter 7, I found this quote from Barack Obama in 2010. From the moment students enter a school, the most important factor in their success is not the color of their skin or the income of their parents, it's the person standing at the front of the classroom. And I thought that was a nice lead-in to this chapter, which really talks about the emotion of teaching, and how are we kind of being reflective of our educators. And so this question, sort of what inspires and motivates you to become the best educator possible? And what have others done along the way to support your journey? Because we know that education, regardless of pre-K to 12 or higher education, it's not an easy job sometimes. So what inspires and motivates you?
Well, I'll share something that someone else has done. Excuse me. When I was teaching, the principal in my school she was always really good about pointing out things that I didn't see myself. So she would say, like, you know, before you taught this student, like, their last art teacher, they like complained and got in trouble before they had to go to art so they wouldn't have to go, and then like got in trouble every time they were in there. And but like, whatever it is that you, however you've connected to this student is really beneficial, and like the student is succeeding in your class in a way that they weren't able to before. So, and like that's something I wouldn't know or wouldn't be able to see. And I think there's a lot of things like that kind of, I mean, we're, you know, in the classroom, you're doing so many things and managing so many things at one time that it's just not easy to see those things. So it was really helpful to have somebody else point things out like that to me. And it just really gave me a renewed sense of the importance of what I was doing and connecting to students.
Nice. Very true. I love what you said about like seeing somebody else's perspective, like something that you wouldn't necessarily have known. Like we go through our days, day in and day out, just through our lens, and then being able to get that feedback, because whether it's from kids or whether it's from our colleagues or our bosses, it does make a big difference and can boost us when we need it. And I think personally, when I was a leader in a school district, and I'm not sure I did enough of that for my staff, like just being verbal about it, like saying the words, like that's I could have done better with that, because they were awesome. They were just great, and I don't know if I told them that enough.
I would say that every time you see the light bulb moment, every time you see a student get something, I am inspired by that. I am inspired by watching them struggle with a concept and then wrapping their head around it and then doing something with it. And when a number of students struggle with something, then I know that there's something wrong with the way that content's being delivered. I have to go back and look at it and see what we need to do. We have an iteration scheduled for our online teacher training that every 6 months a new version goes out, because there's always something that needs to be tweaked or that we can do better. Their success is what inspires me. That's the way I would say it. What do you think, Rocky? I thought she was here. Maybe not.
Rocky got called out.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
No, she doesn't have to be here. I just thought she was going to be on.
Hi, sorry, I missed that. I was helping my grandmother with her water. I missed it. Turning just in time to hear, what do you think, Rocky? And I have no idea what we're talking about.
I was talking about the iterations of IDTT and how we are inspired by our students' success to continue to iterate that course.
Yes, yeah. It's been developing, and with their feedback and everything too, it's been great to continue to see that improve over time.
Oh, nice.
I had the chance to supervise a couple of student teachers this semester who I've had in a couple of classes, including the class that I really talk a lot about, UDL. I talk about it in all my classes, but the one I focus on. But it was so fun and so cool to see them using some of the strategies that we had talked about in the class and sort of go about their day, thinking with a UDL lens. It was just really, really encouraging to me to go back and say, okay, yes, some of this actually is getting through to my students, and they are internalizing it enough that they're turning around and now using it with their students. And it's really, really fun to see.
Awesome. The fruits of your labors, Lee.
Yes.
What's inspired some of the rest of you to be the best that you can be, and who supported you?
I'll jump in.
Thanks, Jeannie.
You know, so I'm in this EDD program. I'm about halfway through, and picking a topic has been hard, and I have it now. I'm in the middle of writing my chapter 3 right now, and I have to admit, like in the fall, I hit this huge moment of like imposter, of like, why am I doing this? Is this gonna, is this really gonna serve anyone? Is it gonna serve me? And one of my professors, who's also has a similar background like mine, she's also a Latina, and she like sat down with me and she's like, you really gotta reflect like how far you've come, and being a first generation English language learner. She's like, you learned to leverage a lot of situations to get where you are now. You really have to give yourself credit. And it was kind of like a hard talk, like, lady, I need comfort, Something I needed to hear. I was like, oh shoot, you're right. Like, I got to keep going. I got to show other people who have struggled in the same ways I have that they can get through this. Like, I'm one of those role models. Anyway, she's someone I really have to credit. She's probably going to be the fourth member on my dissertation committee. But she's also offered to be what does she call it? A silent partner. She's told me multiple times, I am committed to your success. And I aspire to be like her, because she's the reason I kept going. I really truly did hit a wall. And anyway, so that she inspires me to just do that for someone else, to pay it forward.
I love her phrase, I am committed to your success. Wow.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to hear that, right? Everybody needs
that. And she came in at the perfect time. It was great. I'm so grateful.
Awesome. You're making progress, Tina. You are moving along on that EDD.
Oh. So much fun.
Well, let's just move on to like this next question about how can we advocate for our systems to support this emotion of teaching? We can't afford to be losing teachers at any level, and how can we support this conversation that our educators are variable, just like our learners are variable, and so how can we help our system support our teachers? One of the things that we work with teachers a lot here at State Support Team, and it's really interesting to hear the leaders, principals, or curriculum directors say, well, this teacher just doesn't get it. And so, I don't know, we're just going to wait for her to retire or something. And it dawns on me, like, what if that teacher would have said that about one of their learners? That would not be okay. So how is it okay that we can talk that way about our teachers? So it doesn't just apply to our learners, but we are all variable, and how are we supporting that? And so does anybody have any ideas about this? How can we transform our system a little bit?
I don't know if I have an idea, but I wanted to toss out a sort of wrench in the works for this. One of the things that we struggle with this is how to support that emotion without creating spaces for a negative vent session, which is very not productive, because that I think can happen when teachers are burnt out and they're exhausted, and there's a million things. And when you try to give emotional support, sometimes it ends up being sort of it ends up going into a negative place. So I'd love to hear advice of how we can kind of create environments that are able to do that in a positive way, rather than allowing it to kind of spiral. I don't know if anyone else has had similar issues, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we probably have all had similar issues, I would guess. One of the things I've tried with limited success, but sometimes it works, is this idea of after somebody sort of vents a bit, that the next person has to offer some idea before they, sort of pile on. So some kind of, it doesn't have to be a solution, but a different perspective, or maybe a resource, or I hear you, and this is what I try to do, something like that, so that it doesn't just sort of spiral into this.
Mm-hmm.
You have to say something that's helpful, and then you can bitch. But you have to say something that's going to move the conversation forward first.
Great suggestion.
I think the challenge is to allow people to express their emotions without the environment becoming toxic. And that's easier to manage one-on-one than it is when you've got a group of faculty in for professional development. One of the things that we're investigating at this point is humanizing that faculty development and allowing faculty to have more autonomy over what those development sessions look like. But we need to be in partnership with several other agencies on campus to make that work.
So we did a pilot program a while back with a middle school. It was based on UDL. And like one of the things that the teachers said they really appreciated about the program was the fact that they felt like they had a permission slip to try new things, and that they would not be like, it wouldn't be counted against them, because they were part of this pilot. And I don't know, that surprised me a little bit to have to hear that, before they felt like their work would be on the line if they tried something and it didn't go perfectly. That makes me a little sad. But I think that's one of the things that we can at least advocate for if we're working with school systems or working with departments or whatever, that, part of what we're teaching our students is what we're teaching our professionals, is that sometimes you got to take risks and see what happens with teaching, especially. And sometimes it's going to be a miserable failure, and that's okay. And that's part of it. I don't know. I think a lot of teachers fall in the perfectionist camp, and so they get worried that they're going to just royally screw some children up or something. I don't know. Who knows what their thoughts are, but like it's okay. It's okay, and it's okay. And we're going to try some stuff, and some of it's going to fail, and some of it's going to be awesome, and that's just how it is. So I don't know how we can support that other than when we're meeting with people that we're going to be working with, and administrators or whatever, making that very clear to them that this is not UDL and this sort of brain research supported teaching is going to be about some trial and error, and that's okay. That's part of it. Yeah.
Excellent, Jen. Allison, I'm going to ask you to jump in. Like, I thought Jennifer's example was perfect, because having this freedom to take risks and sometimes succeed and sometimes not, that message that is sent by that is super powerful. When you wrote this book and you wrote this chapter and you were thinking about this, supporting the emotion of teaching, what are some things you'd want us to think about in this chapter?
So I found the teaching structures are so rigid, and there are very few professions where by a certain time you have to be someplace because 50 people are waiting for you to walk in the door. Mm-hmm. And then right after that you have to be someplace else, and another 25 are waiting right there, and your day is so scripted sometimes and so scheduled. And with the system comes, I think, a lot of expectations that we hold about what we're supposed to be doing in that system, probably based on our own background experiences and cultural norms of the building. But it can be exhausting if given the variability of teachers. I think it's just incredibly important to think about how we can shift some of those structures. So, if we all have to be on lunch duty, for example, what could be some flexible ways that you can be on lunch duty? But if you're someone who's an introvert and being on in front of, then hundreds of people, that's going to zap your energy. And then you go into your next period class even more exhausted. Wow. So how can we think about the structure of, the goal for whatever lunch duty might be, and then recognizing the variability of our teachers, and then incorporating some flexible ways that each teacher could contribute to the lunch duty time, but in flexible ways, so that we feel like during the course of the day, we're still contributing to the, the systems of the school that need to be addressed. Sometimes it's, standing outside in the hall and monitoring who's going into the bathroom, to sometimes it's, it's really, phone calls with teachers have so many things that they're having to do in a day, and trying to recognize what could be a different option for our teachers to be able to achieve those goals. So I hope that the focus would go to what's the goal and what's the variability of our teachers, and how can we design some flexibility in our very rigid system and structures. Even think of online. So I taught an online course this summer, and it was fabulous again to teach, and again to feel how much goes into designing with UDL. But that online structure is very rigid. I had Canvas, and there it is. And so what could be some ways of being able to support that variability of educator coming into an online course to be able to achieve those goals, and get the feedback you need to the students, be able to present your content in ways that are universally designed. So I think we could probably pick apart any of the system or structures in our different environments and think about how we could try to break down some of the rigidity, make it more goal-directed. Have UDL to inform the design.
Well, thank you for bringing that piece about what is the goal back, because I mean that's where it should always start. But I think we lose sight of that sometimes. Like even that lunch duty example, what is the goal of being on lunch duty? Like, yeah, I love that you brought that back. Thank you.
And I do want to comment on the permission slip piece, because actually just yesterday we were talking about that. We're doing research in New Hampshire with a number of schools, and one of the biggest themes we're getting from the end of the year feedback on that is UDL is a permission slip. And that's so interesting that just, that you brought it up today. I don't know where we'll go with that, or what to do with that, but it's so interesting that it keeps coming up.
Something you said, Allison, too, made me think how smart you are, that you referred to something in our conversation before you were even here. But we talked about the mood meter at the very beginning of our chat today. And I think that I think about lunch duty, or those things that really zap you or drain you. I think of the sort of a battery, like there's those things that drain the battery, and then there's things that charge the battery up. And I think that it's somewhere in your book. You talk about, okay, if you're here, how are you going to move to there? Yes. And I think that, I'd like to, almost a meditation kind of thing throughout the day, say, okay, so where am I on my mood meter, and where do I need to go for the next activity that's coming? Is this a time where I can be recharging? Or if this is going to really drain me, I need to be thinking about what I can do. Or if I'm like super hyped because something just happens and I have to go into this very serious, I have to call the parent about some issue, I need to bring it down a little before I pick up the phone.
Yes, it's not about always being in that Elmo zone. It's really thinking about how you need to shift. So also to the conversation about, we don't want this to just become a negative vent system. Hopefully it doesn't, because you have a goal and you're thinking about how, here's where I am, here's where we need to be, and how can we get there? So it becomes about the strategies and not just staying in this negative place. And if we can figure that out and model that as adults, I think that's one of the most important gifts we could give our students as well. Incoming freshmen, the way they're feeling, and that, that thinking about the mood meter and developing that language both for learning and for emotion, I think are just something that we're not doing in our education, and it's just critically important to that high level outcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I think the piece that most struck me and really was interesting to me was that there's not a judgment call on those emotions either. Like sometimes it is perfectly acceptable to be in that red zone and understanding that, you know, all of that is okay. It's just recognizing where you are and again, how you can make shifts to a different place.
And it's so interesting how different people want different things at different times. Like when I need to review an article, I might want to be a little more in that kind of Oscar the Grouch mode because it actually helps me to give better feedback. Someone else might want to be more in a Pooh Bear. So there's like you're saying, there's no right or wrong, but it really is trying, there are the little pictures, really is trying to think about what you best need to get through, to get through your goal, to achieve the goal. And it might be different each day too. So if I'm reviewing, my kids' artwork, it might be different than my colleagues' work.
Mary, I'm sure it was a little helpful for you to be kind of energized chasing that cow this morning.
That's right. Yeah.
I'll have to get filled in on that story at some point.
It's fair season around here, and the cows are out. And my husband's gone at a conference, so Angry Me was, in the field shoeing, and yeah, ridiculous. So.
That's fantastic.
I'm just going to open it up to, we're not going to get through our final question because I just want to take this last 8 minutes or so, or no, oh goodness, just a few minutes, looks like, for folks to ask Allison questions. And Allison, I'm going to kind of pose this question. There's somebody whose podcast I listen to, Susie Pepper Rollins, and always at the end, she says, what's something that you want to make sure we leave with? So I'm going to pose that to you at the end, like your last hope for us as we think about the book that we've read. So really just anybody, have at Allison, we've got her. So let's pick her brain.
And I'll talk really fast.
Rando question, is this your watercolor artwork on the front?
I made a watercolor and they made their own version of it. Oh, no. Actually, my biggest frustration with the book is I had a lot more illustrations and they took them out because they said the text did the job. And if you don't tell, I want multiple representation.
Yeah.
So I would have to say, so I actually have, I don't know if I'm going to, what to do with it, but I have tons of illustrations for visual image representations of the main concepts. So I don't know if it's going to be a Louis Lord Nelson-esque coloring book kind of thing, or something, but the biggest battle I had with the publisher was around the images. And the cover, we were postponed 3 months because I was so stubborn. I did not want a generic picture of the brain on the cover because I was like, that doesn't represent variability, that doesn't represent emotion, so no.
Good for you. Good for you.
Well, I'll tell you that this could just be me because I think visually, but the fact that there weren't as many illustrations in there, it encouraged me to make my own, which was really helpful. And I know there's research that's recently come out talking about how drawing is going to really enhance your learning. So it was helpful for me to add my own drawings, although I really like yours too. So.
Well, maybe that could be, maybe it's a collaborative.
There you go.
Of the key concepts. I like that. I like that.
And I like that there was a lot of white space around the outside of the text. That was helpful.
Good, good.
Jennifer, you've given me an excellent homework assignment. I'll have to go back and put illustrations in there.
There you go.
Awesome. Other questions for Allison?
Allison, what inspired you to write this book?
My burnout. I continued to burn out as a teacher, and especially in the last job, I didn't quit or leave or anything. I always, finish the year, but I would finish the year exhausted. And, I just over the summer thought, I don't know if I can do this again. And I really started to wonder why. And it was David Rose, who was my advisor in college, in graduate school. I mean, I just feel so lucky that, he always came at things with that lens of emotion. And I had a mother who said, check your emotions at the door. She was not about to have those emotions get in the way. And the more I learned in graduate school, the more I realized emotions are everywhere. You are never without them. And one of the ways I've started actually presenting emotion now when I'm presenting on UDL people often associate it with the engagement guidelines. Emotions are under every single guideline. Emotions are in everything we do. We're never without our emotions. So that, for me, and when I would talk to people, it wasn't part of our conversation. And so unlike, who is the woman, maybe she's stepped off, who is getting her PhD dissertation, my life has not led me to my PhD dissertation yet, but writing this was my way of just taking what we know about brain science and applying it to our best practices in teaching. There's no new teaching strategy in here. There really isn't. But I hope that the framing of how to think about our teaching through the lens of emotion is new. And I hope that that's the big takeaway, that people really start to think about the emotion has to be included in that conversation. Doesn't need to get stuck there and doesn't need to devolve into, I don't like sharing emotions. I don't like the pass the stick and share how you're doing each day. That's a one-size-fits-all emotion sharing thing that I think could be developed to be more flexible. But I do think we need to start integrating the conversation more.
Just like universal design for learning, guidelines need to be integrated into creating course content, emotions. I can work with that. That's, I got it.
And I do think that mood meter is a great place to start. I really do.
I think that's cool.
Yeah. Just starting to reflect on, wait a minute, where am I right now? Is this working for me or not? And then the combination with UDL is really, I think, very powerful.
Well, thank you for your time and effort. I really enjoyed reading it.
I got my first poor review out on Amazon. So, you have those moments. I had to, again, check my emotions and where we are. And the thing was around, we wanted more tools. So, anyone who knows me and knows UDL, I will be defiant in saying, I will not give you a tool. Because it really is about the approach and thinking and the mindset. So I really hope that, I guess that would be the one thing I'd say to you too. Don't look for the tool. Look for the approach and the thinking, and value that variability.
And so I think now the rest of us need to go put our review on Amazon.
Absolutely. I'm thinking.
Counteract the crazy.
I was just going to
remember that one, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Human nature.
It is.
Yeah.
People who write reviews.
Let's chat, buddy. Let's chat.
Yes, absolutely.
What do you say, like positive is positive feedback is like Teflon and negative is like Velcro, right?
Right. I always have that, that "Let It Go" song in my head from Frozen.
I'm that person, by the way, the dissertation person, and I just want to let you know, Allison, you've made it into my chapter 1. You've been cited a few times.
You've arrived.
You've arrived. How the brain works.
Been cited.
Hear your dissertation when you're done. I would love to read it.
Okay, I'll make sure it's spruced up for you.
I would love to, as you all are working with this and thinking about this, it is a journey, as to one of the comments in the chat box. So I would love to be on the ride with you all. So please reach out at any point and, share what's working and what's not working. And I think, I really appreciate that conversation on what really inspires you and those aha moments with the students and those let's just keep sharing those pieces.
Can I ask how many folks here will be at the CAST conference, symposium, whatever it's called? I'm guessing that Cynthia's going to be there.
We are so excited.
It would be really, I know that you're always running in 5,000 directions at those things, but it would be very fun to see if we can pull some of these chat people together and
let's have dinner or something.
A little bit.
Oh, that would be such fun.
For sure.
What's the best way for contact?
Well, I was going to say put Jennifer in charge. She's really good.
I can send you a message. I can do that.
Terrific.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
I'll be there in spirit with you guys, but I won't be able to be there. So one year I'll get there.
Okay, we can just Zoom you in. We'll
There
just
you
have
go.
a
Now
Zoom
I know.
option.
Yeah, we'll set your phone right by your place.
That's
There we
right.
go.
Well, I just want to be really mindful of the time, and we've gone over, and I just really appreciate Allison. Thank you so much for joining us and kind of putting a cap on our final session here. But and I've enjoyed learning with all of you guys and talking about this wonderful book. So
It's been fabulous. Thank you so much for your time. I do have to run. Have a great day, everybody.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank
See you
you
soon.
all.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Jennifer, for pulling this together. And
Yes, thank you.
Well, it
Jennifer.
was Denia's
Allison for
idea.
writing a great book. And
It's Denia's fault. Oh, I'm just kidding. It was her idea.
no, that's awesome.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Some of you in less than a month.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.